But joining me live now is US political analyst Aidan Smith. Aidan, thank you so much for your time. What did you make of this second shooting in Minneapolis? What are you hearing about it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the situation is so in flux. As far as what we saw with the initial shooting of Renee Good, such wild public outcry about this and this woman's death. Even seeing polling showing a majority of Americans, I think 54% to 35% think that the shooting was unjustified beyond just like the literal human toll of the second shooting. It's also something where, in terms of public reaction, it definitely threatens to, from ICE and the administration's perspective, create more of a public outcry, which is obviously not something that they would want public image wise.
And Donald Trump continuing to defend the actions of ICE agents. No doubt we would be expecting to hear from him at some stage soon, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because initially after the shooting, I think in past instances of whenever there's a government and really anywhere and there's some kind of public outcry regarding police or federal enforcement or whatever, there's usually kind of the initial reaction from authorities saying, well, we have a wait to see approach. We're monitoring this closely. The administration's approach to it this time around was pretty quickly, especially with Vice President Vance being very vocal in describing it as a domestic terror incident on the behalf of good. So we'll see if Trump is more vocal about it. It looks like Vance has been kind of more of the administration's face of the response to this in the public eye.
I have noticed that too, and suggesting that this is all about acting in self-defense. I want to get you now, though, on the situation in Iran. The US president has been threatening to intervene for quite a while now. Do you expect this to still happen?
I think it's entirely possible. I mean, I think the thing with Iran is it's something where since 1979, we've gone through cycles and cycles, especially in the last decade, of protests where a lot of people think, okay, this is really going to be it. This is going to be the fall of the regime. But as we all know, is stuff like, what we saw in Syria or Venezuela, regimes are toppled in one way or another. And if we see something, I think it's less likely that we'll see intervention in the case of just further popular unrest. But if we do see an instance where there's a power vacuum in the case of, Iranians overthrowing the republic once and for all, I think that would heighten the risk or possibility, rather, of direct U.S. intervention. But short of that, as long as it's largely these protests, I don't think we'll see direct intervention just yet anyway.
Certainly from the protesters on the ground and people supporting them from afar, we've heard a lot of them say, we want Western intervention. We do want Donald Trump to do something in this situation. What's the read on the ground in the US?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, it's whenever Iran is an interesting issue on this, because a lot of the people that the coalitions are a bit different than I think on a lot of issues, even foreign policy wise. We're on the left, for example, obviously really deep concerns regarding the Iranian regime's abuse of human rights. But at the same time, for a lot of people on the left, there's kind of a hesitancy to support direct military intervention. When these situations kind of become hotter, the coalitions can shift a little bit. But as it stands, I think there's, pretty wide public outcry about the Iranian regime's abuses. I think that this is, according to reports I've seen, this is one of the highest death tolls in terms of crackdowns on protesters. So a lot bloodier even than stuff like in 2006 or 2022 in terms of the Iranian regime's approach. But yeah, just wide public outcry.
Do you take Donald Trump at his word that Iran is not going to be carrying out executions?
As it stands, I think that in general, biggest thing is it's just for outsiders in general, it's really hard to discern. And I think that it will be pretty hard to say until possibly years after the fact when it's better documented. But as it stands, it's kind of hard to see if, it's entirely possible the intelligence community has more information than people in public know. But as it stands, yeah, I think the situation's really in flux, but it's kind of hard to determine for sure that there will be no more executions.
And difficult spot for Trump to be in now too, of course, wanting to avoid any retaliation against the US or even Israel.
Definitely, yeah. And especially when you're going into a midterm, not that that's even the biggest issue here per se, But when you think about it, you never, if you're in the White House, you never want to see a foreign policy situation ever get out of hand. I think at some level, honestly, in terms of U.S. politics, if foreign policy becomes the dominant story, that's generally just not the best case for the administration. The American people tend to prefer these things to be, American people tend to want to see administrations kind of focused on cost of living, domestic issues. So if there is an international crisis, it's generally just super hard to navigate in general, public image wise.
And seeing people from his own administration to caution against any major involvement there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.